But more than that, the perception that a part of you has taken on, that rather than growing and making you healthy, it's making you unhealthy now and causing pain. And see, I think, again, from the work of Root of Stone, understanding the subtle bodies, understanding that we have this astral body, which is the body of emotions and the body of likes and dislikes, and it's the body of pain and pleasure.
Welcome to Beyond the Pain, the podcast that explores what it really takes to break free from chronic pain and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Leigh Brandon, and someone who's spent over 2 decades helping people get to the root cause of pain that no one else could explain. Whether you're dealing with long-term back issues, joint pain, nerve discomfort, or mysterious symptoms that just won't go away, this show is here to help you go deeper. Because beyond the pain, there's clarity, strength, and power waiting for you. Each week, we'll uncover the physical, emotional, biochemical, and energetic causes of pain and how to transform them. Let's dive deep into this week's episode. In today's episode, we're going to explore something that I believe sits at the very heart of chronic pain and long-term illness, the deeper meaning behind symptoms. My guest today is Inna Segal, an intuitive healer, teacher, and author who has spent many years helping people understand how emotional, energetic, and even ancestral experiences can show up as physical pain in the body. Inna's own journey into this work began through her personal struggles with back pain, digestive issues, and psoriasis, challenges that led her to question whether pain is really something that's broken or whether it's actually the body trying to communicate something important. In this conversation, we talk about how unresolved emotions can become physical symptoms, why healing often happens in stages, and why pain, when approached with curiosity rather than fear, can become a powerful teacher rather than an enemy. We also explore some of the common misconceptions around intuitive and energy-based healing, what it is, what it isn't, and why developing self-awareness is such a critical part of any meaningful healing journey. This is a thoughtful, grounded conversation for anyone living with chronic pain, unexplained symptoms, or simply feeling stuck, and for practitioners who want to explore what lies beneath the surface of physical symptoms. So let's dive in. Inna, welcome to Beyond the Pain. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do you know, I was thinking earlier, 'cause I haven't actually been up very long. It's an early one for me today. But I was thinking it's been quite interesting, and again, you asked me earlier, how long I've been doing the podcast. It's a little over 3 years now, almost 200 episodes. And it's quite interesting in that sometimes people reach out to me and they say, "Oh, I'd really love to come on your show." And then other times it's someone that, I've maybe I've read their book or I've done some of their training or I've seen their podcast or I've seen them do webinars. And, I think, oh yeah, I really want to speak to this person. And it's quite interesting because I can only remember one other person who they reached out to me and it was someone that I already wanted to come on the podcast. The only other one I can think of, and there's probably more, but the other one who reached out to me was Udo Erasmus. I don't know if you've heard of Udo Erasmus, but he's famous for his blend of oils. So he creates like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 oil. But yeah, he reached out to me a while ago and was on the podcast. I think it was last year. So I just thought that was quite interesting that, you're someone that I knew of and your team reached out to me and they said, oh, they put all this long information about, as you do. And all they had to have done is write your name and I would have said yes. Because I bought your book, The Secret Language of Your Body. I don't know how many years ago. What year did it come out?
I think the version that you have was 2010.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember exactly when I bought it, but I know it's a long time ago because it's on a Kindle version, and I haven't bought Kindle book for a long, long time. Um, since I moved out of London, I don't need to save space anymore because I've got a lot more space now, which is why I was buying Kindle books. Not that I really like Kindle books, I like the physical book. But since I moved out here 6 years ago, I've bought hundreds of books and none of them have been on Kindle. So yeah, it's a book that I loved. I loved reading, the first time I read it. And I've used it with clients several times as well. And it's quite interesting, when someone's got a particular symptom and I say, just let me read this to you, from your book. And I read it and they're like, oh my God, that's me, you know? Um, so yeah, I mean, I highly recommend anyone watching or listening to this podcast to go and grab a copy of that book because it's a real, it's a great book. And I think for a lot of people, be a real eye opener as well.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's
Ah, no problem at all.
always, yeah, I think it's always so nice to hear it from, especially with doing podcast and, not knowing that it's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, I always like to start right at the beginning. So could you share your own personal story, how your own health challenges potentially led you into the world of energy and intuitive healing, and ultimately what inspired you to write your brilliant book that I've just mentioned, The Secret Language of Your Body?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like the journey that takes most people towards healing as opposed to medicine is when medicine fails.
Mm,
Because unless you were brought up, I think, with alternative medicine, which I feel like I've done with my own children, you usually go to what everybody knows and understands. And my mum was definitely from, that side that is medical and really didn't have much understanding of anything alternative. And so I was really struggling with digestive issues, with back pain in particular, with psoriasis. And at the culmination of all of this and all the different experiences I had led to a lot of back pain, and so I mean, back pain, anxiety, all of this kind of connected together. And I started at the beginning with going to medical doctors, looking at what can you give me for psoriasis, what can you give me for back pain. That led to physiotherapy because that was probably the most easy to understand for
mm,
somebody who's very medically minded, like my mum was. And that led to me having, kind of feeling a bit better, but then going backwards, feeling a bit better, but then feeling backwards. The medication didn't really work for me. It just made my body become more inflamed, as it often does, because of the side
mm,
effects. And so when I was about 18, I ended up meeting my, at that time, a partner, and he was really, really open to alternative medicine. And not only open, actually went to lots of different practitioners and understood it. And so he said to me, how about I introduce you to what that is, and let's start, going to everyone from kinesiologists to, I think I did rolfing. I did all sorts of alternative chiropractic treatments. I went to naturopaths and so on and so forth.
mm,
But what I found for me, and again, I'm not saying this is the same for others, but I found that I wasn't capable of holding any of the changes. So I went to homeopath. I just went everywhere that I could. But even though I would have improvements, I would then go back to where I started. And it was really challenging mentally and emotionally. And on top of everything that I was going through, I ended up getting pregnant when I was 19 and then losing this child at term. So it was a stillbirth,
Mm.
and everything kind of exploded and amplified during that time period. And so I had been seeing this chiropractor between seeing all these naturopaths and everyone else. I was consistently seeing this chiropractor who worked with the nervous system for maybe over a year at that time. And his whole thing was about how, that we need to teach the nervous system to hold whatever it is that we're working with and releasing. And so I showed up at his office one day and I was in agony, and he'd been essentially seeing how my body was reacting to everything. And so he came out of his office and he kind of looked at me and he said, your body's stuck. And I said, I know this part. What are you going to do to help me? And he just stood and thought about it. And then he said nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? And he said, your body just wants to be stuck right now. There's nothing I can do for you. Go home. And I think it took a lot of courage to say that. And I think there was an other aspect where he was essentially asking me to wake up and to do something that I wasn't doing, because I had not understood the concept of coming somewhere and working with your own body. I understood it from the perspective of I show up and you fix me, right?
Mm.
Like the
Mm.
medical system type of
Mm.
understanding. And so on the way home, I had been studying linguistics at the time. So I was studying writing. On the way home, it was very clear to me that there was a language that was very different, that was coming from my body and my mind, and they were just not really connecting. They were not, it was like two completely different aspects of myself. And I had this realization that here was an opportunity showing up in my life to learn how to connect with my body, to learn how to read it, to learn how to work with it and understand it in a new and a different way. And as I went home, I thought, okay, what do I know? What is it that I am aware of? And I had done breath work, and I'd been doing a lot of acting type of work and classes, and I knew how to visualize. I knew different aspects of what essentially what connecting to the body means. So I just started with placing my hands on my back and breathing into it and counting backwards from 30, just because I knew how negative my mind would get. And as I was doing that, it occurred to me that I should ask if there is something higher or spiritual or divine. And it was a conflicting experience for me, because there was a really strong part of me that felt like God had abandoned me or somehow rejected me because of having this child that died.
Mm.
And, so it was painful to ask, and I was really expecting nothing, but I thought, let's just do everything,
Mm.
everything that I can do. And I just felt this warmth move through my body, and there was something in it that felt like an unwinding. And then this thought came into my mind, I wonder if I could see my back. And I never really had that thought before. And as the thought came into my mind, I went, I kind of went blank for a moment, but it felt like somebody pressed like a light switch. And all of a sudden I could see my back. And from there, I started asking questions, but not from this negative victim-like state that I had been in before, but from a place of, I really want to know what this is about. And so I started asking questions around what caused all of these different aspects inside of my body to become ill. And I felt like I was getting this visions meets memory and wisdom. So it's hard to fully explain because all of a sudden I saw myself coming from Eastern Europe to Australia, not being able to speak English and being bullied. And then I became aware of all the different conflict that went on in my family and how I just didn't feel fully safe or relaxed at home. And that also connected to going to high school. And whilst I could speak English now, it was a particular school that was from, that had these extreme people from Eastern Europe like me who were highly subsidized, and people who came from wealth like I could never imagine at that time. Like, to me, I went to visit a few of their houses and it looked like a palace. And and it so I got bullied in a different way. Like, they were very angry about me and my friends coming to the school and them not being superior in the way that they were used to, in that sense. And I noticed that most of my friends had started having back problems.
Mm.
So some had scoliosis and their back, so they were self-protecting in terms of their heart. For me, it was my lower back.
Mm.
And so it was just really interesting. I also saw my grandparents who had never been able to really be themselves or express what happened to them during the war. And I realized that everybody in the family had digestive issues. So it was this culmination of insights, and I cried through some of it. I breathed through some of it. I accepted some. And I fell asleep with that intention of I want to. I want to keep exploring and understanding, because now here's this new capacity that my body has showed me, and I wanna know more. And when I wake up the next day, about 70% of the pain was gone. And I always say to people, because I've noticed that when sometimes I do podcasts, people say, "Oh my God, well, that was instant. That was so quick." And it's like, no, not really. Um, I started having digestive issues when I was 4 or 5, you know.
Mm.
I had psoriasis when I was 10 years old. So the actual transformation, it started with my back, but it was really the fact that my body was actually prepared for release. And I'm writing a book at the moment about understanding the different stages of healing, because people don't realize that to actually get to where I got to have that type of release, which then it took several more weeks for the psoriasis to clear up and for my digestive system to improve and for back pain to completely disappear. There were years of me going to see different practitioners. I just wasn't holding anything. But the actual work on my body, on my nervous system, there was, years of work done as well,
Mm.
until it came to a place where I went, okay, now I'm going to take responsibility for this and hold this. And I'm going to say digestive system has been something that I'm always aware of. There was so much ancestry there and trauma, and loss meets my own loss, that it's a journey that we all have to be aware of. And with the book, I'm going to say, I I realized that I could see into other people's bodies as well. So after my own healing within weeks. It was just it felt accidental that it occurred like this. And all of a sudden I was aware of people's health issues in particular, or emotional issues, or something going on with them. And I decided that I was going to learn everything I could, and that I was always going to learn. I was going to be this student. And I really, really wanted to see if I could help people. At the beginning, my family, right? My grandparents
Mm,
were on my number one list of who I can help. And eventually, as I studied and I went to lots of courses, and Mm, I ended up, because I was a writer, I ended up contacting lots of alternative magazines, because we used to have them, and people could, just pick one up, because they were printed at the time,
mm,
which we don't have anymore. Um, so I contacted them and I said, what if I interviewed a lot of well-known people that I'm interested in, because I want to learn? Would you
mm,
publish their work? And they said yes. So I went around for at least, I think it was 4 years, interviewing various people. And a lot of them had courses, and they would invite me, or they would answer my questions or clarify things for me. And then at one point I felt like, well, why don't I just see if I can help people? I've done all these courses. I understand so much, which was nothing really compared to now, but I thought I did.
mm,
And let's see if maybe I can start to, do something helpful. And it was incredible, because over time because I could see into the body, I started to refine the different things I learned, and I would learn from each person. And I also noticed that as I would kind of scan their body and connect all the pieces together, I would create a map for myself. And I would write all these notes about what was really going on with each person. And then I started to see the connections. And what was really interesting was that I actually had a lot of people that were coming to me who were psychologists, who were acupuncturists or Chinese medicine practitioners. I had doctors. I had enormous amounts of nurses that came, and, and a variety of alternative practitioners. So I could kind of hear the things that they were saying, and I had to learn how to connect and share things that I was getting from their particular perspective, so that they could, align and understand. And I also heard their perspectives, and they were incredibly impressed with what I was doing, which I was in my early 20s at the time. I was like, how could they think that what I'm doing is good when they've studied for so
mm,
long and they know so much more? But eventually I could, the more I connected with people, I did a lot of international healing on the phone, because we couldn't see each other then,
mm,
and I just kept seeing all these links. And eventually there's a few things that happened. I had some clients, and I knew that I couldn't just tell them exactly what I was seeing, because they
mm,
were not, they were too sensitive. And I thought, what if I read to them from all my notes that I'm putting together for a book? And so I started reading to them, and they would go, oh my God, that's just me. That makes complete sense to me. And I would say, I would never say that it was me who wrote this. I would just go,
mm,
can I read something to you that I found? And it was almost like every person that I read it to would say to me, this is me, or this is like 99% accurate, or this is 100% accurate. But there was so much feedback around this, that eventually I went, I want to put it in a book because whilst there were books at that time available, they had an affirmation as a process. And I was like, I just don't think that an affirmation is going to work for a layered health issue. We
Mm,
need to go deeper. And because I've been exposed to all of these different modalities, let me try and put it all together. And that's kind of how the book was born.
mm. Yeah, amazing. Living with persistent pain can feel isolating, like you're meant to figure it out all alone, but you don't have to. Sometimes you just need someone who understands biomechanics, nutrition, gut health, emotional stress, and the nervous system all at once to help you make sense of your symptoms. If you'd like that level of support, you can book a discovery call at bodycheck.co.uk/consultation. Now, back to the episode. It sounds like it's a combination of study, but intuition as well, and almost pattern recognition, really. So, for those that haven't read the book, you go through multiple kind of different conditions and symptoms of the body and then suggest underlying factors that perhaps people wouldn't think about that you've seen cause that particular condition. And there's not just one, there's multiple, isn't there? Like for each symptom, you kind of list, could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and there's, I don't know, half a dozen or so potential causes that, your general public, medical doctors would have absolutely no idea of connecting those dots together, really. But yeah, again, I just want to say it's a fantastic book. If you haven't got a copy and you're interested in staying healthy, I'd definitely recommend getting yourself a copy. So you say you're writing a book at the moment. Do you know
Mhm.
when that's likely to be released?
Some point next year is my intention.
Okay, yeah, I know what it's like publishing books. It's often never quite works out the way you intend, but
Yeah, I thought it would be already published, but when you write a book, you're constantly looking for how can I improve this? I need to walk away
mm,
from it for a month or for 2 months, come back to it, walk away from it, get, have it edited. And this particular one, I'm not feeling to give it to a publisher yet. So I want to see how it goes with publishing it myself.
mm,
So that's kind of, I want to be able to change things when I want to change them, is
mm,
what this is about as well. And so I'm just going, there's no rush, just take your
mm,
time and do it properly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been on both sides. I've had 3 books or 4 books, I guess, that went through publishers, and they've got very, very strict deadlines, and it gets to the point where that's it. You can't make any more changes. And then I've published one myself, and that was a little bit more relaxed. I mean, there was still deadlines, and even for myself, I put myself under a time pressure. It's like there's got to come a point where you got to draw a line under it, otherwise, it's never going to come out. Um,
Yeah.
and if I look through all of my books now, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'd like to change that. I'd like to change that, but
Yeah.
you got to draw a line under it at some point. So moving on, something that you talk about often is how chronic pain and illness can begin in one place, yet show up somewhere completely different in the body. For the audience, why in your view does that happen?
I feel like it takes a long time for most of us to really notice in terms of what's it about and where it's really coming from. And eventually, it might start with a part of the body that makes the most sense in terms of what it's about, because the body has this incredible wisdom, which is obviously what I wrote about in The Secret Language of Your Body. But when it starts, it's so subtle. And because most people are actually outside of their bodies. So they're in chaos mode. They're constantly running around and doing stuff. So I feel like we don't notice for such a long period of time that by the time we do notice, it's really painful or it's exploded. The disease has taken hold. And the idea is to both connect back to when it occurred first, but also the timeline that it might be related to, and start to create more of a map or a picture for yourself where you go, so so for instance, for myself, I really feel that my issues, all of them in a way, stemmed from my throat. I was born with a cord around my throat. I never actually really had physiological issues around my throat. But as soon as, the digestive system came from my grandparents not being able to speak about what occurred to them and what experiences they've had. And my, as well as loss, I'm going to say,
Mhm.
and when I came to Australia, everything started to show up in my life because I didn't feel like I could be myself. And I didn't really feel like I could stand up for myself. I could communicate in a way that was effective for somebody to stop hurting me or to stop doing all those things. So I kind of feel like, the wisdom of the body went, okay, well, you have in your family, you have digestive issues. So there's a weakness. A lot of people in my family have psoriasis. So here's another weakness. Um, and I really feel like when we see the bigger picture, we have so much more understanding, and understanding leads to transformation.
Mm. Yeah, it was quite interesting. You mentioned early on digestive issues, psoriasis, lower back pain. And what's quite interesting, most of my work for the last 10, 15, 20, 24, you can go across different timescales, but most of my work has been helping people out of pain, particularly lower back pain, skin conditions, more so acne and eczema, but psoriasis as well, and digestive issues. And it's quite interesting because I often link psoriasis to digestive issues, and I link lower back pain to digestive issues as well. Um, but what I think you're saying is it actually goes even deeper than that, in that, you know, that the reason why there are digestive issues in your family, it goes back to emotional trauma,
Yeah.
and in your case, emotional trauma from previous generations as well. So is that kind of what you mean when you say, all right, you might have lower back pain, but actually it could go back to before you were even born?
Absolutely. And I found it really interesting for me in terms of mapping the body, right? Because you kind of, and I use that word because it's easy for people to understand, where I might go, so I look at the development of the chakra system if we go into the energetics of it.
Hmm.
And through the study and the work of Rudolf Steiner, I've understood, for instance, that let's say the root chakra develops between 0 and 7, and that's connected to the physical body. But it's also connected, if we look at the root chakra, it's connected to your sexual organs, right? And, and lower back and, that whole area as well. And So when something shows up, and then we go to kind of to the sacral chakra, and that's 7 to 14, and it's connected to the etheric body, which is the body of life and vitality and ancestry as well. So if I look at, where I had my lower back pain, for instance, then this makes so much sense to me, because when it started was probably around the age of 14, but it affected both chakras, the sacral and the root chakra. And the root chakra is also so much about your family and tribe.
Mm,
And so when we start to break things down and look at it in that way, it's so powerful. And then when I bring the throat or the communication to it, it's almost like, well, my family has an issue with communicating, right? They were not capable or able to do it because there was a threat, which again is the root chakra. So even though somebody can say, okay, but then you're saying, for instance, the throat chakra it starts at the age of 28, but that's not when you had it. But again, everything is so layered when
mm,
you really start, as I'm sure you know, Lee, as you
mm,
start to explore and go into it, medicine wants to make everything separate and black and white, right? Linear. Whereas when you actually look at healing, you go, well, nothing is linear. But if I want to understand things, it's like we were talking about Jung and what he brought in terms of his work. So what I have done is I've connected the time periods and the chakras to archetypes, and understanding to understand what an archetype is. So there is, as we grow, obviously, and develop, there's parts of us that are part of our personality. Let's call it that. And some parts of us from childhood, and we start from childhood, we know that in childhood, even starting from the womb, right, we have developmental stages. So we have the trimesters when somebody's pregnant, and then we have the stages of the child developing. During those stages, in that first 7 years, we know that there's a foundation that has been created for the rest of a person's life,
mm,
both on the physical level, but also on mental, emotional levels, in terms of their family and everything that they've absorbed, because they're like a sponge during that
mm,
time. And it makes sense that most people, in terms of parenting, do not understand stages of development.
mm,
And so they might have been present and great, during a particular stage, but not present or in conflict or playing out their own issues during another stage of development, which then means that there's a part of you that stopped growing, but that part that stopped growing has a perspective that it keeps. And whenever your sense of self, your kind of what you call your strength, your core, your I amness weakens, those parts of you that have become stunted, let's call them stuck, which is what the chiropractor was saying to me, they play out. And essentially part of a deeper work in self-understanding and growth is actually understanding, how did we get stuck? What were the thoughts, the feelings, the experiences? But more than that, the perception that a part of you has taken on, that rather than growing and making you healthy, it's making you unhealthy now
mm,
and causing pain. And see, I think, again, from the work of root of Sana, understanding the subtle bodies, understanding that we have this astral body, which is the body of emotions and the body of likes and dislikes, and it's the body of pain and pleasure. So when we recognize that the astral body is all about pain and pleasure, and when there's chaos in your emotional state and your mental state, then it is much more likely that the astral body will create pain. And I think that when people start to really dissect and break things down, they realize that when do we not have pain? The time when we have the least pain or no pain, I'm going to say no pain, is when we're in a deep sleep. And then when you start to understand how the subtle bodies work, then we realize, well, the astral body actually goes into the spiritual world during deep sleep. And when it comes, so you don't feel pain. So the pain is not a physical experience, because if it was, then people who had their legs and arms cut off and different body parts wouldn't say, I still feel like I have that part and I
Mm,
feel pain, right?
mm,
Because it's illogical, because you don't actually have the physical part. And so
mm,
I feel like when people kind of understand the bigger picture, it becomes really exciting to go, ooh, who am I?
mm. Most people think that pain is purely structural. They might say, my joint is worn out or my back is weak. But what I see every day is that most pain almost always has an inflammatory component, and inflammation is often driven by everyday foods that quietly irritate the gut and stress the immune system. When you remove those triggers, the body calms down and pain levels follow. That's why I created the pain-free plate. 7 foods that naturally help calm inflammation and reduce persistent pain. Get your free guide at bodycheck, that's bodycheck.co.uk/pain free plate. And now let's get back to the show. Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 2013, again, apologies to the people that have heard me say this a million times before. To cut a long story short, I ruptured my L45 and L5S1 lumbar discs. Obviously pain, pins and needles, numbness, dropped foot, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything really. And I was due to fly out to California. We had a Czech faculty meeting, and we were told under no uncertain terms, if any of us didn't show up, we were no longer going to be part of the Czech faculty. Um, Paul Check was going through a bit of a hard time at the moment, and I understand why he's put that on us at the time. So anyway, I rang him and I said, Paul, I've blown discs out in my spine. I can't even sit down. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. And he was like, you don't make it, you're out. I was like, what? And so the time that the kind of I started feeling these symptoms, and the time I had to fly out, I'd already booked the flights. It was 4 weeks, and each day's going by, and I'm thinking, I can't sit down. Like, how am I going to get there? I can't stand on an aeroplane for 12 hours. And each day's going by, and I was getting a little bit better, but I still wasn't able to sit down. And then a few days before, I just started to be able to sit down as long as I had a lumbar roll. Anyway, when I was speaking to Paul the first time, he said to me, you know why you've got your back pain, don't you? I was like, why? And he said, so it's in the region of your second chakra. Second chakra is related to the water element. Second chakra is related to rhythm and flow. And he said, tell me, what's your diary been like for the last 6 months? I said, yeah, horrendous. I was actually writing a book called the Tennis Biomechanics Manual on behalf of the Czech Institute, right? So that was also another reason why I was going out there to discuss the book. And, I'd written it, and getting it published and stuff. And he said, "Yeah, you've you've got no rhythm and flow to your day. You've just been working constantly. You know, I was probably working 16 hours a day to try and get this book finished." And he said, "You've been overdoing it. It's your body's way of saying to you, you need more rhythm and flow in your day, and the rhythm and flow includes rest, right?" And I would imagine if you said that to most, again, most lay people, most medical doctors, even physiotherapists, they'd think you were mad, right? That, you know, your body is sending you a message to slow down because you're not slowing down, and there is no rhythm and flow, um, which is interesting as well because you know you mentioned, you know, digestive issues, skin issue, lower back. Growing up, I for 18 years I suffered severe acne, so skin issue. I didn't realize until I was 30 that I'd been constipated my entire life, digestive issue, and then I had lower back pain, which again is quite interesting because you know you've had similar issues, right? And I see quite a link between the gut, the skin, and the lower back. Um, but yeah, interesting. So for people who feel completely overwhelmed by their symptoms or their emotions, what's the best place for them to begin the healing process?
I think that I'm reflecting on this question only because it's easy just to say anything, right, to it. And I
Mm,
usually will say they need to slow down based on the thing you've just said. But it's
mm,
it's almost like there needs to be a part of them that recognizes that there's wisdom, there's a reason for it. And I
mm,
feel like as long as there's anger and rage against what's going on in your body and just not being able to really see or sense that there's absolutely and definitely a reason, right? There's a reason why your body is saying, hey, this is why I have this, and let me show you where it is in my body. And it's like, if we cannot see that there is an opportunity where we can be led somewhere where we can grow from this, then it's this vicious cycle of, I hate my life, I hate my body. And I've seen this a lot from people. And then I've seen those people that go, there, I can't keep fighting my body. I want to work with it and I want to understand it. And we're not on a time limit in terms of this because as long as, and sometimes like in your situation, you are on a time limit. And did you end up getting on the plane and getting to
yeah. Yeah, I
and your
did.
body healed?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm completely fine now.
But when you got on the plane, was the body, was from that wisdom, from that understanding that Paul shared with you, did you feel like things started to shift for you?
So the recovery was slow, right? It was slow. I mean, you know, discs themselves, once they're damaged, that they don't have much blood supply. So to actually repair it does take time. But from day one, I had this underlying knowing I was going to get better. There was no doubt. I had a knowing I was going to get better. Um, but I also, because of my training, I was patient that I knew it wasn't going to be a quick fix. It was going to take time. And even though the progress was slow, I mean, I've torn multiple muscles in my life. I've played a lot, I've played sport all my life. I've had muscle tears and they heal really quickly. Like I can tear a muscle, grade 1 muscle tear, 2 or 3 days later, it's completely fine. But I knew this was going to take time. So I had a degree of patience, but I had an underlying knowing I was going to get better. But when Paul said that to me, it did make sense. So I guess if you still got that confusion, like why has this happened to me? I can imagine that that could potentially slow down any kind of healing process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I just feel like when there is a knowingness, it's almost like we're always going, I need to know why. And I feel like when there is a knowingness, we kind of go, as a human race, and not everybody obviously, but many people, where we go, there is a purpose. There is a purpose, and maybe my body's saying, hey, you need to, this is what's not working. Or maybe it's sharing, my ancestry and what didn't work in terms of my ancestry and what I can do differently. And maybe it's pushing me, this situation is pushing me to become, to delve, to look, to become a deeper person, to to work with what I have. This is so many, maybe it's moving me towards understanding myself as a spiritual being. And I think that when you do get that there is some sort of a purpose behind the suffering, behind the struggle, then you can work with it a lot better. You can,
Mm,
it's almost like you can, like you said, it may take time, but in some ways you can just slow down and go, I can work with this because it's leading me towards, to some kind of a conclusion, towards some kind of a transformation.
mm. Yeah, and for me, it was a wake up call. It was I knew what I wasn't doing. I knew I needed more rest. I knew that, and I mean, yeah, there was a part of me was like, okay, well, this is a project. Once it's done, I can I can rest. Um, but I think my body was maybe saying, "But will you rest?" Right?
Yeah. I'll
And it,
force you to rest.
and I'm aware now. So I work with clients 2 days a week now, and I am kind of aware that those days have become quite long days. Sometimes they're 14-hour days, and the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, you got to be careful there because maybe I could end up going down that road again, and maybe without that injury, maybe I wouldn't have that in my mind now. You know,
And
so as I've said a number of times, I look back at that injury as a blessing because it taught me so much. And yeah, it was embarrassing at the time because I'd been helping people recover from lower back pain for a long time. So there was a part of me that said, well, I should know better, right? But what it also gave me was the knowledge of the experience that my clients were going through that I could never have without going through that experience.
I think that is such a powerful point, that sometimes as a practitioner, I'm not saying even consciously choose something, but we might go, um, there's something that we're helping somebody to deal with, or a larger group of people, but we don't necessarily fully understand all the reasoning for it, for how it feels for somebody to go through something really challenging. And when, the universe goes, hey, it's your turn now, there is there is a sense of disappointment, but there's also, I feel, there's so many layers of opportunity that is there as well, that
Mm.
occur. And it's really interesting to explore it. And I remember thinking, like, when I separated from my ex-husband, who I didn't even know what narcissism was at the time. And I discovered and I started to understand that, oh my God, he wasn't brilliant. He was narcissistic. And again, it wasn't kind of a label to throw out mildly, just because I was upset with things. It was a known fact in his family, and it was actually one of his longest friends who said to me, "You're going to have to read about this because you're not going to heal without it." And of course, the question arose several times for me: how did someone, as you know, intelligent as me end up with this type of a person? And it was so powerful to recognize how much it opened my eyes to the fact that this is something that so many people are now going through, because there's a recognition that's occurred. And had I not gone through it myself, even if I would help somebody with it, there is just absolutely no way that I would have the depth of understanding of what it takes to transform and rebuild yourself from an experience where you've been essentially crushed as a human being. And it was very powerful to recognize, and I'm not saying that I did it so that I can help other people, but I'm saying that it was part of that journey of going, oh my God, this is something I never even considered, because I didn't know what it was. We hear the
Mm.
words, right, being thrown out, but what to actually do to transform it, it's like no one can teach this who hasn't truly been through it. Like, I mean, when they creating processes around it, and it was such a massive study that I had to undertake. So I feel like there's so much we don't understand of how things
Mm.
show up in our lives and why.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you teach that true healing unfolds in stages. What are some of those stages, and where do people tend to get stuck, especially, when they try to rush or skip ahead? If you've been living with pain for a while, you've probably felt frustrated, like you're trying lots of things, but nothing really changes. That's because pain rarely comes from one single issue. It's usually biomechanics, nutrition, stress, sleep, lifestyle habits, and your nervous system is all interacting together. When we look at everything as a whole, the pattern becomes clear. If you want help understanding what's driving your pain, you can book a discovery call with me at bodycheck.co.uk. That's bodycheck.co.uk/consultation. All right, back to the episode.
People actually can get stuck at any stage, but the stage of pain and suffering is usually stage one. So this is where you're suffering and it just doesn't feel like there's meaning in the suffering. It's almost like, you know, I'm suffering because I'm being punished. I'm suffering because, something or someone doesn't, my body doesn't, is not my friend. It's the opposite. It's my enemy. I'm suffering because they did this and that and the other. And in that stage, we usually become very anxious and we just want somebody to fix it, want somebody to take it away.
Mm,
And it is definitely a stage of suffering where no matter what anybody says, if we're going to talk about our archetypes, for instance, the archetype of the victim is
mm,
so incredibly strong
mm,
that there is nothing that anyone can do, or there's nothing that the person cannot hear anything because they're in that, you know, I don't see the point of this. And I feel like stage two, when we enter it, we start to, at the beginning of stage two, we're still looking for a magic genie, but not necessarily now one just from medicine. Here we're going, there must be a practitioner that can make order out of this chaos
mm,
that I'm experiencing. And, how can where can I find this? How can yeah, where is this person that can still heal me?
mm,
And often there is a sense of disappointment because people, like with my own story, people can only do so much to support you and your own journey. And the reason you can't hold it is because internally you don't have the flexibility, the wisdom, the ability to truly hold this new change. So you go back to what you know. And I feel like when we enter stage three of healing, we start to go, maybe somehow I have some kind of an involvement in this scenario. Maybe I've done something, or or something happened that I can start to connect the pieces of the puzzle together because I have more maturity now and it can make more sense. And so you become a little bit stronger in yourself, and then from there, we go to stage four of healing. And now we start to really ask, how can I deepen my understanding of my body and who I am and the different parts of me? And, is there a real wisdom in the body? Are there, what is the shadow and light sides of my personality and my, thought patterns and emotions? We start to go, maybe, maybe there's some darkness in me that I'm going to need to face. Maybe I need to recognize that things have happened to me that led me to particular experiences and situations. And so from there, we start to enter into stage six where we're more willing. Sorry, did I say it's just hearing noise? Was I on stage four or five before?
I think you went from 4 to 6.
I thought so. Heard some noise and got anyway, so sorry, we go to stage five. And stage five is where you start to go, I'm now ready to start to do some work. And this is when you don't skip the stages, because we can skip it and do all sorts of things to push and force and try and get a quick result. And we can push from, stage 3 into stage 6, for instance, which is a stage of release. So we could miss stage 4 and 5 altogether and not do any of the work and not focus on, well, how do I create enough internal flexibility in my body so that I can hold something new? And so we get to um the stage 5, and we're really ready and willing to do deeper work. So here we might go, I'm ready to go to a course on healing and take responsibility where I'm willing to do the processes,
Mm.
where I'm going to make a commitment to start to heal myself. And we we start to kind of go, ooh, I'm understanding a lot more. I may go to a practitioner who does physical adjustments, but I'm also going to go to someone where I delve deeper into where I'm stuck emotionally and mentally or energetically. And if you allow yourself to have time for that and you're not pushing and rushing, you can have absolutely incredible transformations. And, then we start to enter into stage 6. And stage 6 is where the energy builds, right? And you feel uncomfortable. It's actually quite an uncomfortable stage where it's like your body, your sense of self is preparing for a release. The question is it preparing for a release or a transformation? Because a release could be getting a cold. A transformation is, I might get a cold, but I am also understanding that I'm transforming and letting go. And I've learned something. I've gained wisdom from my experience, and I'm now creating kind of space for, for this release to fully happen. So it can almost feel like there's more and more tension that builds inside your body. And then from there, we do get to the release, to that letting go in stage 7. But again, stage 7 can be very gentle, or you can end up in the hospital. As like you were saying, you can be going through different stages, but ignoring that because you're too busy, doing things for everyone, where the body just goes, okay, we're just going to have a release from stage 3, which is you're not even recognizing that you need to slow down or stop. And now we're going to go straight to stage 7, which is the release is almost violent, from the
Mm.
body, where it's like you've torn something, but the body's still speaking to you and trying to, offer you wisdom. And, or it can be a gentle release, or it can be like what I shared in terms of, again, my own experience, where um within me connecting to my body within several weeks, there was this huge transformation. But that transformation came through going to so many different practitioners. There were um like there was a course that I went to, for instance, after I had this child that died, where I got there because I went to a psychologist and I said to him, I want to die. Like, because he said, what do you want to experience? And I said, I want to die. And he said, okay, there's, if you're for real, then there is a course you can go to. And it was literally on that day, and it was a 5-hour drive. And I said to my partner at the time, I was like, we're going to this. And I learned so much, in that particular course. So, there are so many stages of it. And I don't know if I would have had the full release that I had I not done all of the steps prior to prepare myself. And to my conscious mind, it just seemed like nothing was happening and I was going round and round in circles. But in reality, there was, different aspects that were happening, around preparation.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking of someone probably listening or watching this episode and, they're in pain. They've been going round and round in circles. They've had pain for a long time, same condition. They've tried a number of things. I'm just thinking, obviously they're stuck, right? They're stuck. They don't kind of know what's next to do. But also, if they're stuck in those early phases, there's not really the opportunity to move forwards without knowing what the next step is, right? And part of me is kind of trying to work this out in that we know that the first 7 years of life, the brain's in the delta and theta brainwave states. It's, hypnotic, almost trance-like state. And our environment gets downloaded and, gets downloaded into our nervous system. And then throughout the rest of our life, unless we rewrite that neurological program, most of our decisions and beliefs are automatic based on, let's call it our conditioning in the first 7 years of life. And then also something you mentioned in the archetypes, and particularly the survival archetypes. So the child, the victim, the saboteur, the prostitute, they're running in the subconscious, preventing people from moving forwards. From your point of view, how do people kind of override those subconscious programs? Because again, most people won't even know they've got them, right? How in your view would people overcome that? Because that's what and again, I don't know if you agree, but that's what I see as most people's stumbling blocks. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that they have to want to, because I think that, again, I'm going to come back to Rudolf Steiner's work, and he talks about the fact that we're living in a time of the consciousness soul. So he talks about the development of the soul, and that essentially we're in the time of the development of our I am in the sense of self. And so if somebody doesn't make the choice, then you can't force them. You can't kind of make them. And it's almost like the best we can do, and it can be very painful for people to do that. The best we can do is hold space for the transformation to occur in the way that it needs to occur, in a way that where that person's journey leads them to it. And if and if that person's journey doesn't lead them towards themselves being open to the possibility of transforming, then no one can essentially really do that for them, unless, I'm going to say, unless that person is much older and they're essentially, it's like somehow you connect, and you have some karmic, and now we're going to spiritual exploration of this. There's some kind of a karmic connection where, I'm going to say, I only once had this experience with someone, and it was with my grandfather, where he was sharing with me at one point about he spent 10 years in Siberia in a work camp, and he very rarely, almost never spoke about this. It was one of the very few times that he did. And he spoke about the fact that how how difficult it was for him, and at one point he started sharing some of the horrors of what happened in that 10 years he was there. And as he was sharing, I felt like there was this deep link that occurred between him and me, and he I started to really feel through what he wasn't allowing himself to feel. And I started crying. And he said to me, "Oh, okay, that's it. I'm not going to share this anymore with you. Time um, to complete this. This conversation. This happened over 50 years ago." And I went home. My daughter was really small at the time. And when I went home, I knew that I felt that deep, deep connection. Like there was a door that opened up to this connection. And I went home and I went into the shower because I felt like that's the place where nobody, the kids or my husband at the time would just leave me alone. And as I was having this shower, I could and it wasn't even I wasn't trying, I'm gonna say. So I wasn't trying to change my grandfather, I wasn't trying to do anything, I was just allowing myself to feel, because I felt like he couldn't feel. And as I was doing this, very clearly the archetype of his 14-year-old self showed up. And again, this was not a visualization because I wasn't trying to visualize that part. So I wasn't connecting to it by me trying to put my will on it. But he showed up so clearly and he was like a skeleton. And I said to him, "I know that you've never been able to cry or feel this, so let me do it for you." And my grandfather at the time had he had developed the beginning of dementia. So he was forgetting things, he was losing stuff and so on, and he was starting to become quite aggressive because that disease can cause that.
Hmm.
So I so as this archetype of this child came up, I just allowed myself to feel and to cry for him. And then for the next several weeks, I worked with this archetype because you know, it was like this is a part of a person's personality. I want to say it's a very real part, which Jung spoke about, and a live part. And this aspect of my grandfather lived in a dark cell that he had pushed so, so, so far away in his, let's call it subconscious mind. And I really believe that a lot of Alzheimer's and that type of conditions, and like the one that my grandfather had, comes from this pushing something very traumatic away and not feeling through it either, not feeling through it. And
Mm.
so as I was doing this over several weeks, I could sense that this archetypal part of my grandfather was transforming and becoming stronger and stronger and I knew the difference because once I could literally ask this part to go into the sun, again, that was more of I guess, an asking and a visualization, but still, I couldn't push in this experience, right? And eventually, my grandfather, that child that was a skeleton, became nurtured and nourished. And I remember calling my grandparents, and I used to have this resistance to calling because it was so negative. There was so much negativity. And my grandfather picked up the phone, and I thought, how do I say hello, but not say how are you? Because I cannot like hold the barrage of negativity. And it was incredibly, because as I started talking to him, he said he started joking and telling me stories that he used to, like little poems and stories that he used to tell me when I was a child. And I said, well, how are you feeling? And he said, I'm alive. That's, life is great. And it was absolutely incredible. Everybody in the family noticed, because I didn't tell anybody. And everybody in the family would make comments about it. And until my grandmother died, for the next 5 years, he could that archetype that, came back to him, essentially, he was able to hold that state. But when my grandmother died, then within a year he died, and he went just it was like it was so fast the way he went backwards and lost all of
Mm,
his memory and went into fantasy.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I guess there's a part of me that, you know, the caregiver archetype, I see people struggling. I naturally want to help. And it can be really challenging for me to see people in pain.
Yeah.
And, and oftentimes I can see which archetype they're struggling with, whether it's the saboteur, the prostitute, the victim, etc. Um, and it's just it frustrates me. But then I guess, from what you're saying as well, you've got to understand it's their journey, right?
Mm. And I think you can do you need to kind of come to going, what can I do as a practitioner? Maybe I can
Or even
make
it's
an
friends or
adjustment.
family members as well,
I
right?
think the friends and family members are way harder, because as a
Hmm.
practitioner, they've come to you, so they're already more open.
Yeah.
I think the hardest, and I struggle with this as well, is close family members,
Mm,
and just really, because they don't listen. These are the ones that actually, that you'll have people pay you a lot of money to listen to you. And then you have those that you're like, I'll do it for free. Just, let me help you. And they're like, no. And they'll be in this pain and suffering, and whatever you're saying, they're just like, no. And, you know, I've been surrounded by, those people as well. And I just have
mm,
to constantly, hold space for it and go, as there's nothing I can do in this scenario when they're in that place of they cannot hear you. They're in stage 1 of healing. They cannot. I think once you get to stage 3, you're more able to hear things. But in stage 1, there's just no hearing, and people constantly circle around, and it's almost like we have to be understanding as much as we can, and loving, but at the same time also take care of ourselves, because
mm,
it's easy to stop taking care of yourself when people really close to you are not well, and I see that constantly.
mm. A common myth I still hear, even from professionals, is that diet has nothing to do with chronic pain. And that's simply not true. Your gut and your immune system influence inflammation, hormones, energy, and yes, pain. If you're eating foods that drive inflammation, it's almost impossible to feel better long term. The Pain Free Plate gives you 7 foods that help settle your system and support lasting relief. You can download it at bodycheck.co.uk. That's bodycheck.co.uk/pain-free-plate. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, it was interesting when you were talking about the different stages of healing. I was also thinking there are practitioners that are stuck in those phases as well. Like, for instance, you know, sadly, the majority of medically trained professionals are stuck in phase one, right? It's my
Yeah.
job to fix you, right?
Yeah.
Rather than, the word doctor comes from the Latin docere, which means to teach,
Mm.
right? So a doctor's job really is to teach someone how to heal themselves. But because of obviously the Flexner report, and we could go down that rabbit hole, they're now trained to believe that they are some mini god, and it's down to them to fix people, right? But that's a whole nother podcast. Uh,
It is.
so when someone starts exploring intuitive or energetic healing, what are some of the common misunderstandings or misconceptions that they run into?
I love that question. That it's going to be instant, that because it's energy, it can do everything, that they don't have to really learn anything else, that if they've just learned something extremely basic and there's some energy coming out of their hands, that's it, and they can become a healer immediately. That oh my god, there's just so many that you don't have to go deep, that
Mm,
it's that there's so many concepts of it, that it's the other person doesn't have to do anything. It's like you're just waving your hands around, and that's all that there is. That there's not years and years of education, way more education that you actually need than even a doctor needs. I think the foundational education for a doctor is 7 years, and then they specialize.
mm,
I feel like I've been doing this for 25 years and I haven't really had other jobs before, since I started doing healing work. I have not done anything else. And 25 years in, I'm still like, there's so much I don't know, right?
mm,
And I'm a person who studies a lot. That is my life. That is what I do.
mm,
So it's the misconception that one of the biggest ones is that it can, or it is really simple and easy, and then you can do a 2-day workshop, and after this 2-day workshop, you're done. You have all the skills, or a 5-day or a 10-day, and it's like, no, it's years. If you want to be good at it, it's years of connecting and and discovering. And for those people who are just doing it for yourself, then I think one of the biggest things is that it's going to happen all at once, as opposed to little bit by little bit. And it can sometimes be so challenging to explain to people that because they cannot hear it, especially if they're in stage one, that if you're in that stuckness and you don't celebrate and you cannot acknowledge any movement forward, you will not move forward. Right? You'll continue feeding the parts that are stuck.
mm.
So
Yeah. So I remember I studied the body talk system many years ago, 20-ish years ago. And I think it's great. I do think it's a great system. I don't practice it anymore, but I think it's a great system. But what I found, or what I saw, was that there was quite a lot of people, practitioners, and I would look at them and think, wow, you look really unhealthy. And it was it was like, because they were body talk practitioners, that's all they needed. And then, in break times, I'm seeing they're, eating biscuits or cookies or cakes or whatever. And then, I remember there was one lady, she was a lovely lady. And I remember, there was This was quite early on in the internet days. I'm not sure how the information went round back then, but I remember, it was said that she'd got cancer, and then a lot of the other practitioners were saying, "Well, she'll be fine because she'll get body talk and she'll be fine." And then, literally within a few weeks, she passed away. And I feel like that's almost an illustration of what you were trying to say. It's like, yes, you can go and receive energy medicine, but if you're not doing everything else, right, you're fighting against the tide, really. Um, and because the body is so complex, there's so many layers to it, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and it's a never ending story, right? And you know, it- so I've been doing the body talk for two years, and it just makes you kind of realize, so many times the same emotion might come up for the same person, and then like, how is that? I thought we cleared that before. It's like, no, no, you get so many opportunities to go through the same experiences and react in a certain way with the same emotion. And, even if you've cleared a particular emotion today, you've still got to experience the rest of your life where you're going to experience more emotions, more trauma, right?
Well, exactly, and there's detoxing, there's healthy eating, there's exercise. It's like there's so much we cannot just get away from
Mm,
that are the basics, you know, that you build on. And yeah, 100% everything you've said, I agree with that. You know, it's a constant refinement, I think, in terms of being healthy. What does that mean and look like at each stage of your life? And we haven't even gone into relationships and how that affects you, and whether we
mm,
have boundaries or lack of boundaries, or just, and what is, how do we sleep? How do we wake up? There's so much.
mm. Yeah, I mean, we did mention a little bit about, um, our ancestry. Obviously, we
Mm,
know, scientifically, we now know that things get passed down ancestrally, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally as well. Yeah, so we know, through studies that even emotions can be passed down ancestrally. Um, you know, and that's without even looking into, past lives. Do past lives affect you
mm,
now? There's so many things potentially we can go down, but um, I think to kind of sum up what you've been saying, pretty much the whole episode is that, if you're in pain, you just need to be open to the fact that you can heal, and the reason why you're in pain might be different from the reason that you are. You might be different. You might think, "Oh, I fell on something, therefore it hurts." But if it's been hurting for 10 years, the cells that were hurt don't exist anymore, right? Just like phantom limb pain, as an example.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, just be open to the fact that you can heal, and I guess potentially as well, it does help if you can work with someone that perhaps has that depth of knowledge to help you
Mm,
understand why you're in pain. And then, again, as you were saying, there are still other things. We still got to live in this physical realm, right? So, the six foundation factors that we teach at the Czech Institute. So, your thoughts, you need to have positive thoughts. You need to breathe correctly. You need to be hydrated. You need to eat correctly. You need to move correctly. You need to sleep and rest correctly. And to add to that, something that you said that I think is probably crucial in in today's world is that we have to detoxify, and that's um, protecting yourself or eliminating exposure to toxins, but then also, with the right help, try to release toxins that are already stored in your body as well. Um, so, yeah, I think that's kind of summed up the whole the whole episode. Would you agree? Or you got anything else to add?
I agree, and I think that it's really about getting to know yourself at the end of the
Mm,
day, and it's a journey. And as much as we want to fight against what is present and what is there, fighting against it only leads to more pain as opposed to exploring it. And I also wanted to say that I think we also have stage 8 of healing, which is where new discoveries show up, where there is a cleansing, where there is a time for new opportunities in terms of, who am I now and what can I be capable of now and what can I work with and transform now?
mm. Yeah, I think the other thing that just came into my mind as well, and it's kind of linked to the archetypes, is, if you're in pain, also recognize how you're benefiting from that as well.
Mm, yes. Yes. I agree with that. It's a
Because
big
again,
one.
once you understand that, maybe you realize it's not that important, or it's not really what you want,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, just as an example, because people might be thinking, well, what's he talking about? Um, you know, some people, again, this is from my experience, some people don't want to get rid of their pain because when they were growing up, pain was the way they got love and attention,
Uh,
or illness was the way they got love and attention. So, what happens when you're young in those first 7 years? If you're sick, especially if you've got a number of siblings, that might be the only time you get one-to-one time with your mother,
mm,
right? If she's working, she might have to take the whole day off work. You get the whole day. Now you're subconsciously saying, well, the way you get love and attention is by
yeah.
being unwell or being in pain,
Mm,
right? So those are the kind of things, because again, I do see that quite a lot, that kind of thing as well. Um, and that can be obviously why some people sabotage their health,
mm,
because at the subconscious level, they they relate being in pain to receiving love and attention. And if they get out of pain, that's really scary for them because their subconscious is now telling them, well, no one's going to pay you any attention, give you any love if you're not in pain. But actually, the thing you need to ask yourself is, but is that really true?
mm. So true.
Yeah. Inna, this has been great. What's next for you?
I think I'm in a time of my life where I just want to one look after my health. Like you were saying, I'm definitely very conscious that being in your 40s is the time to really establish good habits. Ideally you did them before, but to
Mm,
to hone in even more. So I'm very aware of that as an intention because I want to do what I'm saying. I want to always be doing that. And at the same time to, essentially to continue to inspire people through teaching, through writing, through I guess through doing podcasts. And that's why I've been willing this year has been my kind of year to go, hey, I have some space. Because again, you've got to create space for everything.
mm,
I have some space and I want to speak to amazing, interesting people like yourself, Leigh, who have so much wisdom. And at the same time, the opportunity from that conversation to inspire others to go
mm,
deeper, to explore more, um to go into a deeper place of transformation. I think I'd love to, this is also my intention. There's certain courses that I teach which give people a real foundational understanding of healing from from so many layers and levels that that I feel people are ready for now. Many more people are ready to dive deeper into things that are a little bit more complex, but have so much richness and wisdom. And I'd love to teach in different time zones because I
Mm,
am in a very particular time zone. So I hope that I have an opportunity in the future to go into European time zone and then maybe at some point into the US time zone. But essentially, I just want to continue inspiring people to grow because I feel like for me, health is one thing and you need to be healthy to want to grow.
mm,
But I'm very inspired by the idea of us gaining incredible wisdom, which is why I spend so much time studying root of sinus work because I'm just so moved by his discoveries. And always feel like there's never enough time to go to the depth that you want to go, that I want to go to. So I look at my, I think I said to you, I've got over 200, I think it's like maybe 250 books of Red of Sina.
mm.
So I think he wrote 500. So I have half,
Wow.
yeah, or through his lectures. I don't know if he didn't
Mm,
write them, but, they
mm,
were created. And, I'm just, I think I have such gratitude that I am teachable and I'm willing to constantly be learning from whatever the experience is. And I think we should always be teachable. And so,
mm,
I encourage people to do that. And if they do want to delve deeper um, into my work, then I really encourage people to actually explore a masterclass with me. And on my website at the moment, I want people to have an ability to connect to discover something for free first. And I'm not sure that this will be like that forever because it costs money as well,
mm,
and often a lot of money to that people don't realize to, I guess, to create free product. But I have these master classes which essentially give people the experience of processes that they can do, of understanding of what I teach, and you know layers of archetypal work, or understanding the different wisdom of the body in different parts. And they often go for, it's kind of like, I'm going to say it's like a workshop because they go between 3 and 4 hours. And I also think step one is giving yourself that time to go, let me discover, let me sit, next to my computer for that time, not just scrolling Facebook or the internet or whatever, Instagram, but actually learning and actually participating. And I always say to people, bring a journal and give yourself that opportunity. And then if you're resonating, then come and do deeper courses. Some of them are live online. At the moment, I'm in the place of, I want to make my work available to anybody in any country. And I think we're finally at a time where this is possible in terms of, and it can be very good quality. And this is part of the reason that I'm focusing on online presentations at this point more in my life, and just really, guiding people towards this self-discovery. And so again, this is on my website, which is innasegal.com. And if you'll see all the masterclasses, but if you want to go to into a deep dive, then just go to innasegal.com /masterclass. So again, it's just INNASEGAL.com/masterclass. And yeah, you can go on a deeper journey.
Awesome. I think I'll be checking that out myself.
It's great.
Like you, I just love to learn, and there's just so much to learn, and I love learning, and then I love using the information I've learned to help other people as well. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to check out your masterclasses for sure.
That's great. Thank you.
Inna, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I'm pretty sure the audience is going to love it as well. So, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So that's it from Inna and me for this week. But be sure to join me same time, same place next week on Beyond the Pain. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pain. If this episode resonated, please follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's been struggling. And remember, pain is not permanent. With the right insight and support, you can turn it into power. Until next time, stay open, stay strong, and keep moving beyond the pain.